एक्सेलेंसीज, हमारे यहाँ हजारों वर्ष पूर्व सूर्योपनिषद में कहा गया है, सूर्याद भवन्ति भूतानि सूर्येण पालिताति तू, अर्थात सब कुछ सूर्य से ही उत्पन्न हुआ है, सबकी ऊर्जा का स्रोत सूर्य ही है और सूर्य की ऊर्जा से ही सबका पालन होता है। पृथ्वी पर जब से जीवन उत्पन्न हुआ तभी से सभी प्राणियों का जीवन चक्र, उनकी दिनचर्या सूर्य के उदय और अस्त से जुड़ी रही है। जब तक यह प्राकृतिक कनेक्शन बना रहा तब तक हमारा प्लेनेट भी स्वस्थ रहा, लेकिन आधुनिक काल में मनुष्य ने सूर्य द्वारा स्थापित चक्र से आगे निकलने की होड़ में प्राकृतिक संतुलन को डिस्टर्ब किया और अपने पर्यावरण का बड़ा नुकसान भी कर लिया। अगर हमें फिर से प्रकृति के साथ संतुलित जीवन का संबंध स्थापित करना है तो इसका रास्ता हमारे सूर्य से ही प्रकाशित होगा। मानवता के भविष्य को बचाने के लिए हमें फिर से सूरज के साथ चलना होगा। एक्सेलेंसीज, जितनी ऊर्जा पूरी मानव जाति साल भर में उपयोग करती है, उतनी ऊर्जा सूर्य 1 घंटे में धरती को देता है और यह अपार ऊर्जा पूरी तरह से क्लीन है, सस्टेनेबल है। चुनौती सिर्फ इतनी है कि सौर ऊर्जा दिन में ही उपलब्ध है और मौसम पर भी निर्भर है। वन सन, वन वर्ल्ड, वन ग्रिड, इसी चुनौती का हल है। एक वर्ल्ड वाइड ग्रिड से क्लीन एनर्जी हर जगह हर समय मिल पाएगी। इससे स्टोरेज की आवश्यकता भी कम होगी और सोलर प्रोजेक्ट्स की वायबिलिटी भी बढ़ेगी। इस रचनात्मक पहल से
There we go, that's Narendra Modi, of course, the Indian Prime Minister speaking here at the COP26 conference in Glasgow. Very good afternoon and welcome live from Glasgow and the Climate Change Summit. This is your afternoon briefing. I'm Darren McCaffrey. And coming up over the next hour, we're going to bring you all the latest political news, debate and analysis here from Scotland, including speaking to the chairman of the committee that is in effect responsible for setting the UK's targets and timetables on the emissions and the environment. We'll also be going back live into that hall where Narendra Modi is speaking, and we'll be hearing from Prince William and from Bill Gates a little later on in the programme. And away from COP26, smart motorways that are highly dangerous or a solution to our traffic problems. We're bringing you the latest on a new parliamentary report on smart motorways and talk to campaigners who want to see them abolished. And as always here on GB News, we want to hear what you've got to say on all today's stories and particularly COP26. You can email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GB News. It is Tuesday afternoon, a very good afternoon, and welcome to the programme. Very good afternoon and welcome to the programme. We're going to start today, of course, with what's been announced at COP today, and a pretty significant move, it must be said, when it comes to protecting the world's forests and trees, particularly in places like the Amazon, with lots of major countries from Canada to Russia to Brazil and the Congo signing up to try and protect the world's forests. 85% actually the world's forests in those countries from deforestations in the years to come. And delighted to say, actually joining me, my first guest on the programme is Simon West. He is from the World Forest Organization and joins me live here in Glasgow. A very good afternoon to you, Simon, if you want to come and stand around slightly more that way.
Good afternoon, Darren.
Just how significant is this announcement today?
Oh, undoubtedly it's very significant. The amount of money committed is enormous, and I hope that they do follow through with it. Although we have been here before in 2014 with a lesser number of countries signing up to a similar agreement, and nothing has happened. In 2020, the deforestation was the largest amount ever in the Amazon. So it is very scary that they have committed and then not done anything. So I hope this new commitment will result in positive action.
In saying that, you point rightly out that a deal or a similar deal was done in 2014, and actually lots more trees have been cut down since. Our forests are getting smaller. Is there any confidence that this deal is going to make any significant change?
Oh, my default position is that one of optimism. So yes, the amount of money that's been committed in the number of countries is considerably greater. The 28 countries that have committed to deforesting or getting a deforestation-free supply chain in their foodstuffs is a really big hope that they will actually do it, and also that they're looking after the indigenous peoples, because they are the people on the front line of climate change. They are the people who are suffering the most. Where the World Forest Organization does their work in Kenya, the people there are suffering from continual drought simply because of climate change.
And just reminds us how important forests are for the world. I mean, they're often referred to, aren't they, as the world's lungs?
Yeah, definitely they are. Our documentary is called Trees Are the Key, because they are the key to solving a lot of our climate change issues, particularly in the tropical regions. They grow 10 times faster than they do up here in Glasgow, for example. And if we look after the people that are planting the trees will look after us. And of course, oxygen produced in the Amazon, produced in Kenya, produced anywhere in tropical zones, blows all around the world and helps us to breathe.
Okay, Simon, thank you very much indeed. Simon West there from the World Forest Organization joining us live here in Glasgow. As I say, we are in Glasgow covering, of course, COP, and I think we can hopefully now go back over to the main stage where President Joe Biden is talking to delegates. Let's have a listen in to what the US President is saying here in Glasgow.
We're going to meet those goals and decarbonize our economies to reach net zero emissions by 2050. To start, state the obvious, we have to immediately scale up clean technologies that are already commercially available and cost competitive, like wind and solar energy. In the United States, we set a goal of deploying 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030, creating tens of thousands of good-paying union jobs for American workers, and meeting the power needs of almost 10,000 American homes every year. We can do this now. We don't have to wait. At the same time, we recognize that our current technology alone won't get us where we need to be. So it must also be a decisive decade for innovation, developing, demonstrating, and commercializing new clean energy technologies by 2030 so that they can be widely deployed in time to meet our 2050 net zero goals. Clean hydrogen, long-duration energy storage, next-generation renewables and nuclear, carbon capture, sustainable agriculture, and so much more. We need to invest in breakthroughs, and I welcome the UK's leadership on the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda. Innovation is the key to unlocking our future. That's why the United States is working to quadruple funding for clean energy research and development over the next 4 years, and will lead a year of action in 2022 to advance clean technologies globally. Over the past 2 days, I've announced several U.S. government-led initiatives to help develop and scale clean energy transmission. But we can't achieve our goals through government action alone. I'm looking at some of the men and women in front of me that can help accelerate and develop clean energy technologies. The United States and the World Economic Forum are launching the First Movers Coalition. So let me explain what the First Movers Coalition is, and I expect you already know. The First Movers Coalition is starting with more than 24 of the world's largest and most innovative companies. The coalition represents 8 major sectors that comprise 30% of the global emissions we now are dealing with: steel, shipping, aluminum, concrete, trucking, aviation, chemicals, and direct air capture. These companies will be critical partners in pushing for commercially viable alternatives to decarbonize these industrial sectors and more. And while championing the U.S. innovation of good-paying jobs at the same time, and the U.S. government is going to use our enormous market power as the world's largest buyer of goods and services, some $650 billion in acquisitions annually, to do the same. The government purchases that much. Together, these policies, God willing, will spur a wave of new and better products into the market and new companies and projects that will create good-paying jobs. So we're attacking the challenge from both ends. We're sending the demand signal loud and clear and investing in research and development to expand supply. We don't just want to innovate in the industrial sector. The agricultural sector also has a vital role to play. As stewards of the land, our farmers belong on the front lines of the climate fight. And together with the United Arab Emirates, I'm proud to announce the launch of Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, AIM for Climate. This is something we first proposed at my Leaders Summit on Climate. Over the last 6 months, we've worked with more than 75 partners to catalyze public and private investment in climate-smart agriculture and food system innovation. Today, along with 75 partners, we're going to launch a $4 billion initial investment globally. The United States is planning to mobilize $1 billion of that $4 billion over the next 5 years, and I invite all of you to join us in working to double the investment by the time we meet at COP27. As with every aspect of the climate crisis, no one can do this alone. We need all of us working together. I know you're tired of hearing that said. It's said over and over and over again, but it's true. And as we do, the United States will lead by example and share with the world our considerable powers of innovation. And as my grandfather would say, with the grace of God, the goodwill of neighbors, and the creek not rise, and we're going to make a lot of progress. All kidding aside, I think there's virtually nothing we're unable to do, particularly when we do it together. And again, I want to thank all the private sector for their work. Thank you.
Thank you, President Biden, for telling us more about the First Movers Coalition and AIM for Climate Initiative. Next, we will hear from President Kenyatta of Kenya. Please take your place at the right lectern.
There we go. That was the US President Joe Biden speaking live here in Glasgow. And actually, in the next couple of minutes, we're going to hear from Prince William as well as Bill Gates, and we'll bring you that live on GB News here on The Briefing. But before we do that, also delighted to say that joining me is Lord Deben. He is the chairman of the Climate Change Committee and is live here in Glasgow. If you just move over here and I'll bring you in, we can talk a little about what your role is and what you're hoping to achieve over the next kind of 2 weeks.
Well, our job is to advise Parliament and therefore the government, not only of the United Kingdom but of each of the countries, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, as to what the target should be and how they should reach it, and then looking at the problems which are raised, and therefore answering people like you about what those problems are and how one deals with them.
So how does one deal with them? Because when you listen to the Prime Minister over the last couple of days, he's been very gloomy in many ways. Quite apocalyptic language been used by a whole range of leaders actually at this conference. I mean, do you share the pessimism?
Well, I'm not pessimistic. I'm apocalyptic in the sense that if we don't do this, then we will, in fact, have made the world an impossible place to live on. So we know that. What we have to do is to do the things we can do, which will make it actually a greener and cleaner and kinder world. So in fighting climate change, we actually improve the world, but we've just got to do these things, and so many of them, if we do them properly, are actually better for everybody.
Now, as you well know, it's all very well making kind of grand aspirations and goals and setting targets and all that sort of stuff. Ultimately, it's about actually implementing that. That's the difficult bit, isn't it, really?
Always, and politicians are always less good at that, which is why the Climate Change Act says that you have to do things now and can't put it off until after the next election or for somebody else who's doing the job. So doing the things, like, for example, saying by 2030 every car that's sold in this country has got to be electric or the equivalent. That moves the whole car industry into doing that. We now see the price of those cars coming down. What the government's got to do is to help people make that change when that change has to take place, so that it doesn't exclude those who are least well off. So it's a question of a fair transition.
In saying that, there are a lot of people also who, have listened to what they've heard. They listen to the language involved, and frankly, they just don't believe it. In the sense that they don't believe the kind of apocalyptic terms that the world's going to come into. What would you say to them to try and convince them or try and win back their trust, particularly people who have been told not to trust experts by some people in the Conservative government?
Well, first of all, you just have to recognise that every major scientific institution, every major scientist in the climate and the rest of it have a common view that this is a disastrous situation unless we get it down to something near 1.5 increase in temperature. Secondly, you know from your own self that spring is now coming 17 days earlier, that the rain comes down in a constant downpour instead of the showers that we used to have. We know about the floods and the heat waves, and we're in some of the best parts of the world. And actually, I don't agree with you that people don't think this. Everywhere we go, every poll you like shows that people really are concerned about it, but they want politicians to talk in their language about how you deal with it and talk in normal, sensible terms instead of having phrases like, well, I don't know, kilowatt hours. I've banned that. I don't think anybody knows what a kilowatt hour is. What they want to know is what's going to happen to their bills, how are they going to meet those, who's going to help them. That's what they want to know.
Yeah, I was listening to people talk about tons of carbon. I don't know what a ton of carbon actually looks like.
I quite agree, and it's silly to talk about it in those terms. So what we have to say is, let's be honest about the facts, which are that there is no doubt that we are heading for disaster. What we have to do is to turn that back, and we're already doing it. When we came out of Paris, the world was moving towards 3 degrees increase. We're now moving towards 2.5 degrees increase. If we get things right here, we might be able to pull that down much nearer to 2. We've got to get it down to 1.5.
Just very finally, I suppose, we're about to hear from Prince William. We know we heard from Prince Charles over the last couple of days, and indeed the Queen yesterday. How important is this event for Britain? How important is the royal family's role been in all of this? And is Britain genuinely, as the Prime Minister would claim, being a kind of global leader in all of this?
We've been a global leader in setting the targets. We're a global leader in making a proper strategy to meet those targets. We're not yet a global leader in doing the things, which is the point you make. The royal family have got this unique situation which they can say, unconnected with party politics, that if you look at the facts, this is a disaster and we've got to put it right. And after all, the Queen is the head of the Commonwealth, and she sees what happens in those very hot countries where it's already disastrous.
Okay. Well, Darren, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GB News. Really, really appreciate your time. I'm going to shimmy you out of the way if that's all right, and I'm going to hop in front of the camera. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. And well, as I say, not everyone's on that page. There are people who are sometimes sceptical about what's trying to be achieved here in Glasgow, and indeed about the whole climate change strategy being pursued by most governments around the world. And we're always here to reflect different views on GB News. So delighted to say we're joined by Alex Epstein, who is joining us from California. Good afternoon to you, Alex, or I should say good morning to you. Just set out where you are, what your impressions are of what's going on here in Glasgow.
Well, I think the previous guest you had, I think, reflects the religious delusion that's going on, because he says he's certain that we're headed toward disaster. He portrays today's world as uniquely bad, as endangered by climate. And the fact is, the world has never been better, including we've never been safer from climate. We're over 98. We have our rate of climate related deaths, so storms, floods, heat, etc., is down 98% over the last century. And one of the big reasons is that we burn fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are what power all the amazing machines that make our lives good. We still have 3 billion people in the world who still use less electricity than the the average American refrigerator. So if you look at the facts, what we should be doing is expanding access to energy, including expanding the use of fossil fuels as well as nuclear. And instead, what we have is people acting like today's world is terrible and completely ignoring the people for whom it is terrible. That is, the people who are poor, specifically energy poor. So I think all of this is completely backwards.
Alex, does that include people who die from pollution? Because I don't surely they're included in your figures of natural disasters.
Well, no. So climate. So this is not a pollution conference, right? This is saying that everyone is going to die from climate. But if you want to factor in pollution, life expectancies using fossil fuels, you look at places like China and India, which have far worse pollution than we do, they have skyrocketing life expectancies. Why? Because the benefits of fossil fuels far, far outweigh the negative side effects. And that is the thing that the whole UN IPCC is in total denial of.
Life expectancy, that's news to me, it must be said. Also, isn't a very human-centric view to be put in place? We share this planet.
Yes.
With millions of different species of animals. They've not had a great time, it must be said, in the post-industrial era.
Well, that's an interesting part of this anti-human religion, is it's assumed that A, it's immoral for us to impact things, but also that it's worse for everything else. Actually, if we use dense sources of energy like fossil fuels and especially nuclear, we have a much better ability to preserve the best parts of nature. Whereas if we rely on biomass, as much of Europe is doing to hit its renewables targets, or we build a whole bunch of solar and wind, it actually makes it harder to preserve nature. So we can preserve the best parts of nature, but it is for humans. I don't want to save the planet from human beings. I want to improve the planet for human beings.
Alex, how important is it? Because, you know, clearly there will be people who agree with this view, and you're right to say there's a consensus, certainly within this conference centre, that it's not necessarily found universally across the world. And there's been talk, hasn't there, among social media companies to a degree about them ensuring that they would say the facts are on the ground, but the concern about freedom of rights and speech activists is that might curtail some of the sceptical voices. How concerned are you about the role that social media might play in this ongoing discussion?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think that these platforms, I do believe these platforms own the platform, so they can do what they want in terms of what is, as long as they follow their own terms of service. In terms of what's rational, I think the key thing that all of them are getting wrong, which I mentioned before, is they're only looking at negative side effects of fossil fuels and not looking at benefits. So if you look at what Twitter is saying, they're like, oh, we're going to police all this climate misinformation, but they don't police the whole denial of the fact that climate-related deaths are at all-time lows, the fact that fossil fuels have driven world poverty, extreme poverty, from 40% to 10%, in the last 40 years. So they're totally evading the big picture. And also they're not very good on science. I have corrected social media platforms multiple times. A few months ago, I corrected Twitter. They admitted it. They corrected their story, but they didn't know something as simple as the fact that when we talk about 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees, that's not from now. That's from 100 years ago. They didn't even know that, which shows how little they know about science. And so given that, they probably shouldn't be in the business of trying to fact check anyone. And if they do, they should really hire me.
You say that, Alex, though, but in the end, Lord Demden was just on saying that almost every scientist in the world is on the same page as him. They're not on the same page as you.
No, I mean, that guy is a total fraud if you look at what he said. His characterization of every scientist saying that we're headed for disaster is demonstrably false. What he's doing is he's taking the fact that there's consensus that we have some impact on climate and equating that with consensus on climate catastrophe. So that is a total equivocation. That's a basic fallacy in philosophy. And I don't know that guy. I've just studied him a little bit, but he is a charlatan even just doing that, or he's totally ignorant of the actual science.
But why do you think you're so why do you think you're so right, and so many other people? It seems like actually probably the vast majority of people, at least in the science world, disagree with you. But why do you think you're right?
Well, first of all, I don't think you have a clear idea of what most people in science think, since that's all filtered through different institutions. But the basic reason I'm right and they're wrong is I think of things from a consistently pro-human perspective. So I look at the world in terms of I want to maximize human flourishing, and I look carefully at the full context, both the benefits and side effects of different options. Most people look at the world, or most people in the media look at the world from the perspective that human impact is evil, that we should eliminate it at all costs, and they only look for negative side effects of fossil fuels. That's how they can be totally ignorant of the fact that fossil fuels have made the world amazing. If you don't admit that today's world is amazing because of fossil fuels, you are totally unqualified to make any predictions about the future, because either you are anti-human or ignorant.
Okay, and just very finally, Alex, I mean, what is your solution to all of this? Is it a kind of laissez-faire, we don't really need to do anything, or is there any sense that actually we do need to mitigate some of this? Because I think, as you recognise yourself, humans do have an impact on the climate. It's just about how great that impact is.
Well, the fact that we have an impact doesn't even mean that it's net negative. I think the jury is out because there's a lot of beneficial warming and then greening is good. But I think my main focus is, no, I think the core problem in the world is poverty and lack of energy. So we should be optimizing for that. Now, part of that is actually liberating nuclear and other promising forms of non-carbon energy. But if you look at what that climate change organization that guy is part of, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, like they're all about mandating unreliables, so solar and wind. Britain historically and the US have huge hostility toward nuclear. So we're not even doing a good job in terms of non-carbon. So I'm in favor of liberating everything, primarily to empower the world, but it will also make possible lower carbon real options in the future instead of these total fantasy net zero things that will totally bankrupt Britain, even if you try to do 1/4 of it.
Okay, sorry, Alex, I was going to end it there. Just finally on that,
okay,
because that's a really important point you've just made. And that was, Boris Johnson's argument against that is that the UK has managed to cut its carbon emissions by 44% in the last 3 decades, yet GDP is up 78%. Arnold Schwarzenegger argues that California's got some of the most stringent environmental regulations and rules in the US, and yet it's by far still the strongest economy in the United States. Like their argument is actually, this doesn't destroy economies, it helps them, this investment.
Yeah, I mean, so I know California very intimately since I live here. So first of all, what has been done so far is a tiny fraction of what's being advocated. And there's certain kinds of low-hanging fruit, like going from coal to gas. That's totally different than going from gas to unreliables, which nobody has done at scale in the world. Also, what's happening in California and the UK is we have huge problems with energy costs in California and in the UK. You have huge fuel poverty problems there, people literally freezing to death, burning old library books. So in terms of energy, it's a disaster. Yes, there are other things in your economy that are good, but you should be ashamed of the fact that you're not growing more, not proud of the fact that you managed to grow despite having an idiotic energy policy.
Okay, Alex Epstein, thank you very much indeed for joining us there from California. As I say, I'm not entirely sure lots of people would recognise a booming life expectancy rate in Russia and people freezing to death here in Britain. But do let me know your views, GBNews. GBviews at gbnews.uk, or indeed at GBNews. Always keen to hear what you think of what we're saying here in Glasgow, and indeed the people that we interview on this programme, to get a sense of your thoughts. Well, having listened to all of that, and just to let you know, we are waiting, as I say, to hear from Prince William. He's due to be speaking in the conference in the next couple of minutes. We will bring you that live. But before we do, let's bring in James Woodhausen. He is a visiting professor at London South Bank University. Good afternoon to you, James. First of all, I assume you were listening there to what Alex Epstein had to say. What are your thoughts on what he had to say?
Well, I was, and I'm quite sympathetic to his humanism, I must say. Don't agree on everything. I just want to comment on Lord Deben, who had the nerve to say, let's be honest about the facts. He doesn't recount his own personal background, but I urge your viewers to look him up. And he also had the nerve to say that, the focus was on implementation. Now, if you go to their website, these are facts. Darren, you go to the Climate Change Committee website, you will find, when we're talking implementation, no mention of geothermal energy, no mention of reforestation, no mention of nuclear fusion or small modular reactors. Very importantly, Lord Deben said that every car that's sold from 2030 will have to be green. He seems unaware of the 8 million used car market in the United Kingdom. He is unaware. They have made one mention of hydroelectricity on their website. The last mention of nuclear was 2 years ago. The last mention of tidal was 5 years ago. And when they do mention nuclear, they're always knocking it and saying how, it can't work on its own and it's never delivered and it's too costly. So what is he interested in, this learned lord, and his committee, which includes a behavioural scientist, a solicitor, and a taxman, from the Institute of Fiscal Studies, and the CEO, who's also a taxman, Chris Stark. Well, what they're interested in implementing is changes in behaviour. And if you look at the website once again, you'll find 25 mentions of behaviour, how we've all got to change. This is not democracy, Darren. He was not elected, this Lord. He is technocratically imposing his will on you and me and saying you've got to change that tie. It's got too big of carbon footprint. Actually, it looks quite nice to me.
Yeah. But he would say, and maybe I've got this completely wrong as well, but he would say that actually most of the world's scientists, or at least most of the ones that governments seem to...
You're changing the subject. You're changing the subject. You're changing the subject because what he said actually was that he would implement things, and he's not doing that. The only implementation he's interested in is not to discuss technological solutions, except what I liked about Mr. Epstein was his reference to unreliables rather than renewables. You can talk all about science that you like, Darren, and it's fair enough, but you're using it as a stick to beat people with when you're not addressing my point, which is that he is not interested in technology. He is not interested in the used car white van man who drives our roads. He is interested in changing your and my behaviour. He is a technocrat, an autocrat, an unelected lord with a disgraceful record around the British disease mad cows some years back. He's also a company director, and I quote from the Times, the 4th of February 2019. It's not my report, it's their report.
So we're not... James, we're not going to turn this into a discussion about a man who's not here to defend himself. He is appointed by a government that is democratically elected on an election just 2 years ago. Let's stick to
not independent
here, which is what...
He's not independent.
So what would you like the leaders here then to be discussing? What would you like to see changed?
Well, I was interested that Joe Biden, to his credit, although he used the phrase unlocking the future, as soon as I hear the phrase unlocking innovation, you know it's going to be a tissue of lies. But he did at least talk about some of the solutions, the technological solutions in which America is interested. They included a whole number of things, but one of them was air capture, which is the capture of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. That is not also on Lord Debon's brief. He's not interested in anything high-tech like that. He's interested in making us make do with unreliable sources of electricity and holding out the chimera, the mirage of electric cars, which nobody will be able to afford. It's very clear the things that need to be done. I'm not contesting what is too widely called the science. What I'm contesting is whether they're interested in technological solutions, or rather, as Lord Debon himself said, apocalyptic thinking. He admitted to the fact that he is apocalyptic. Well, that's great. He was appointed by a democratically elected government. You look at the composition of the Climate Change Committee, you'll have some second thoughts about just how independent they are, how much they're interested in technology. They have a solicitor. They have all kinds of people who have a strong pro-environmentalist view. They're not independent. They're running our lives. They are the government in relation to energy and climate change, and we can't vote them out. We didn't vote them in. We can't vote them out. They're not independent. Okay,
James, appreciate your thoughts and your times, and I'm sure lots of people will agree and disagree with you, but thank you very much for appearing. That's James Woodhousen from the London South Bank University. Okay, you're watching GB News. As I say, we're live here in Glasgow at COP26. We're going to go live into the conference hall action in the next couple of minutes. I keep promising you it's going to happen. Things running behind a little bit here. We are going to hear from Prince William and Bill Gates very shortly indeed. But first, let's go back to London and get the very latest news this hour.
Thanks, Darren. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date at 3:30. At least 90 countries have committed to reduce methane by 30% by the year 2030. Well, that amounts to almost half of global methane emissions. New regulatory measures will be put in place as part of the US-led initiative announced at the COP26 Climate Summit. 2 Metropolitan Police officers have pleaded guilty to misconduct in public office after they shared images of the bodies of 2 murdered women. PC Dennis Jaffa and PC Jamie Lewis took photos of the sisters Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman on WhatsApp while they were protecting a police cordon. Former FIFA President Sepp Blatter and ex-UEFA boss Michael Platini have been charged with fraud in Switzerland. It follows an investigation into a payment of more than £1.6 million from FIFA to Platini in 2011. Both had denied any wrongdoing. Insulate Britain protesters have been removed from 3 separate sites after staging demonstrations in major cities outside of London for the first time. Around 60 activists disrupted traffic in Manchester, Birmingham and the capital. It's now the 8th consecutive week they've held protests. Antonio Conte has been appointed as the new Tottenham Hotspur head coach. Well, it comes after Spurs sacked Nuno Espirito Santo after only 4 months in charge. The former Inter Milan manager has signed an initial contract with the club until the summer of 2023. He says he's extremely happy to return to coaching. You're up to date here on GB News. We'll have a full update for you at 4 o'clock. Before we go back to Darren in Glasgow, a short break.
Hi there. Some places seeing shower after shower today, other places avoiding them entirely and seeing plenty of sunshine. And inland, under clear spells, it will be a chilly one tonight with a touch of frost in places. Low pressure is moving away, the isobars are opening out, but so we've still got this chilly northwesterly breeze, and that is bringing showers primarily to the north and west through the rest of the day. Decent shelter from those showers across central and eastern parts of the UK, so really it's northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of West Wales into Cornwall where we see those showers continuing overnight. 1 or 2 though spilling down the North Sea to affect eastern coasts, and inland clear skies will lead to dropping temperatures with a few mist and fog patches first thing and a touch of frost in places as far south as Southampton and as far north as the Central Belt. Around coasts, there'll be a bit of cloud and a bit too much breeze to see a frosty start to the day on Wednesday. And there'll be further showers affecting these western coasts, Cornwall, West Wales, northern western Scotland, Northern Ireland, and more showers coming down the eastern side of England compared to today, with 1 or 2 making their way into the Midlands. But it's in central areas where we'll see the best of the sunny or bright spells, and it will feel cold, especially near the coast and with that brisk breeze. So quite bracing along the North Sea for Wednesday. And there'll be further showers along that North Sea coast for a time on Wednesday night, but eventually showers do ease away from coastal areas, and under those clear skies, quite widely, it will be another frosty one with temperatures into the low single figures or just below freezing in a few sheltered spots. So quite widely a frost as we begin things on Thursday away from coasts. But another bright day is expected. In fact, many places seeing a drier and brighter day compared to recent days, with showers mostly confined to coastal areas in the west, the far north and the east. Friday is another largely dry day, but we'll see thicker cloud and some rain in the far northwest.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
Hi, I'm Patrick Christies.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
And we're hosting a show right here on GB News, 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, called To The Point.
We're going to be talking about all the big issues that matter to you at home in Britain.
Absolutely, whether it's holding politicians to account, discussing what's taking place in the Channel, banging on about law and order, we're not afraid to do the absolute lot of it.
Yes, and if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we'll be saying it.
Make sure you're here 9:30am till 12pm, every single weekday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me live from 9pm to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday. Your weekend starts here. My show exists to do three things: to inform, to debate and to entertain. Big guests, big stories and big opinions. And I can't do any of it without you. It's lively and it's a little bit funny. So join me from 9pm to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday on GB News.
Join my show Farage, 7pm till 8pm, Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Planet. I'm pleased to tell you that joining us in this room today are some of those best and brightest minds, the eco-innovators of our planet. They are the inaugural Earthshot Prize finalists. 2 weeks ago in London, we announced the first 5 winners of the Earthshot Prize and awarded each £1 million to scale their solutions. Our finalists are bursting with energy, ideas and ambition. So please expect many of them to come knocking on your doors. Their ingenuity is amazing. Their potential is off the charts. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the real superstars in this room today. Let's start with our 3 finalists for the Earthshot Prize to protect and restore nature. John Kehekwa from the DRC leads the Pole Pole Foundation, a community-led conservation model that shows us how communities can protect wildlife while feeding their people. Tom Crowther, based in Switzerland, leads Restore, Tom leads Restore, an online platform that unites people all over the planet to restore the world's natural ecosystems. And finally, representing our Earthshot Prize winner, the Republic of Costa Rica, Vice Minister Cynthia Bazuna. Costa Rica has provided an example to the world that deforestation can be turned around while growing your economy. Our second Earthshot, so relevant to today's discussion, is Fix Our Climate. From Bangladesh, let me introduce Eshrat Waris from Sulshare. Who pioneered an energy exchange network, allowing people to sell excess energy produced by the sun. From Nigeria, Olubanjo, the founder of Ready. Which makes clean energy affordable through rechargeable solar-powered capsules. And finally, our winner, Vaiteya Kawan, who helped create AEM electrolyzer in Thailand, is pioneering the use of green hydrogen, helping transform how we power our industry and vehicles. These 3 solutions are physically represented in the room today, so you can see for yourself how exciting they actually are. Revive Our Oceans is next. Dr. Enrique Sala, who would have been here, but he is lending his insights to another COP panel next door. He leads Pristine Seas from the USA, fighting to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030. Next is the Living Seawalls team in Australia, represented by Melanie Bishop. Their replicable seawall panels are bringing marine life back to coastal sea defences. And finally, based in the Bahamas, Sam Taisha from Coral Vita. Sam and his team won the prize with climate-resistant, fast-growing coral. Our fourth Earthshot is to build a waste-free world. Yosuke Maeda from Japan has created a tiny water treatment plant. A water treatment plant called Waterbox that turns 98% of wastewater into clean water. Next is David Auerbach from Sanji. Based in Kenya, their circular sanitation solution converts human waste into safe products for farmers. And our winner in this category is the city of Milan, whose food waste hubs cut waste while tackling hunger. Sadly, the mayor couldn't be with us today, but I know he'd love to show you how to replicate this approach worldwide. Our final Earthshot prize is to clean our air, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to the winner, Vijit Mohan from India. His pioneering technology creates profitable products from agricultural waste, giving farmers alternatives to the global problem of crop burning. Ma Jun from the Blue Map app couldn't be here with us today, but he's helping citizens hold polluters to account in China. And I'm almost done. I hope our finalists have given you cause for optimism. They represent a growing wave of innovators dedicating their time and talent to finding solutions to repair our planet. Today, I'm asking you to create the conditions in which they can thrive and their ideas can scale. I will finish with an introduction to our 15th finalist, who also happens to be just 15 years old. Venetia Umashankar, who's over there, from India, is the brains behind a solar ironing cart. With the potential to improve air quality by replacing charcoal with solar power for literally millions of street vendors. This is just one of her many inventions. She puts us all to shame. Venetia, we're all privileged to share the stage with you. Over to you.
For the next 2 weeks of COP26, we will speak about our future. Deadlines, milestones, hopes and fears. I, however, am not here to speak about the future. I am the future. In 2030, by when we must halve our carbon emissions, I'll be just 24 years old. By 2050, when we will assess whether net zero has been achieved or not, I'll be in my early 40s. And by 2100, hopefully still going strong at 94. The point is that me and my generation will live to see the consequences of our actions today. Yet none of what we discuss today seems practical to me. You are deciding whether or not we will have a chance to live in a habitable world. You are deciding whether or not we are worth fighting for, worth supporting, and worth caring. Many of my generation are angry and frustrated at leaders who have made empty promises and failed to deliver. And we have every reason to be angry. But I have no time for anger. I want to act. I'm not just a girl from India. I'm a girl from Earth, and I'm proud to be so. I'm also a student, innovator, environmentalist, and entrepreneur. But most importantly, I'm an optimist. Today, I ask, with all due respect, that we stop talking and start doing. We, the Earthshot Prize winners and finalists, need you to back our innovations, projects, and solutions, not an economy built on fossil fuels, smoke, and pollution. We need to stop thinking about old debates because we need a new vision for a new future. So you need to invest your time, money, and effort in us to shape our future. Now, just before we started the Earthshot Prize, we all watched a video.
There we go. That is one of the winners of the Earthshot Prize that Prince William there was introducing at the COP conference here in Glasgow. Just to remind you, of course, that this Earthshot Prize is an attempt, really, in many ways, to try and inspire and give money to people who want to innovate and come up with solutions. They would argue when it comes to technology facing the planet. The 5 winners are receiving £1 million each, actually. And it's kind of based on John F. Kennedy's moonshot program, do you remember, to try and get man to the moon. Prince William saying that this is a kind of collective effort to try and utilise people's unique ability to rise to what he argues is the greatest challenge in the history of humanity. And I think later on at this conference we're going to hear also from Bill Gates, who's here. Leonardo DiCaprio is in the building. We're also expecting Barack Obama to arrive in the coming days as well. But let's move away now from what's been happening here in Glasgow, and let's focus on another big story today, and that is the area of smart motorways, which many campaigners are now saying should be suspended amid safety concerns, including the MPs and campaigners have been in Parliament today trying to convince them that needs to happen. And among them is Claire Mercier, whose husband, Jason, very sadly died on a smart motorway back in 2009 on the stretch of the M1 and joins us now. Very good afternoon to you, Claire. Thank you for joining us on GB News. I suppose, first of all, just talk us through what happened to your husband back on that fateful day.
Well, it was actually 2019, not 2009. And 2.5 years ago, we knew less about smart motorways than we do now. So he had a minor collision on the motorway near Medwall in Sheffield, and it should have only ever stayed as a minor collision, but because it was a smart motorway, when him and the other motorist pulled over into what should have been the hard shoulder, it was a live running lane. They couldn't get their vehicles out of the live running lane because of the crash barrier, and they themselves couldn't get over the crash barrier because there was a 30-foot drop to the other side of it. So they were abandoned in harm's way. It's your legal obligation to stop after a crash, so they had to stop. There was a sign saying no hard shoulder for 4 miles. That's the only information they had, because like I said, we didn't know about smart motorways 2.5 years ago. And they basically were abandoned by the side of the road and put in harm's way, and that's exactly what happened to them. A HGV that couldn't manoeuvre in time crashed into them and killed them instantly. And even before they were killed, none of the technology that we're told is there protected them. And even when they were dead and spread across the entire road, smashed to bits, nothing picked them up. It relied on members of the public phoning in because none of this technology works. It didn't protect them when they were alive, and it didn't protect them when they were dead.
Claire, absolutely dreadful. Yeah, sorry, 2019. I apologise for that. You've been trying to convince MPs, haven't you, to change the rules on this, to essentially get rid of smart motorways altogether?
Yes, yeah, we do not accept that the technology can replace the hard shoulder. It's been proven the technology can't replace the hard shoulder. None of these lasers, none of these sensors, they haven't got enough control room staff. They have to put their traffic officers in the harm's way to do this. So the hard shoulder didn't do any of that. It worked for 50 years. There's this excuse that some people abuse the hard shoulder. So we're going to take away the hard shoulder for the entire population for the odd motorists that abuse the hard shoulder. That's absolutely ridiculous. My husband and 57 other people have been killed because of that. And even in non-fatal accidents, how do the emergency vehicles get through? You just cannot get the emergency vehicles through. They get stuck in the traffic. And the same happened with my husband. Even though an emergency vehicle was no good to him, the coroner couldn't get through. The undertaker couldn't get through. My husband's body was on the road for 8 hours because nobody could get through.
unbelievably dreadful, Claire. Just finally and quickly, if you can, because we're running out of time, just can you, or do you hope that actually MPs are listening? Do you think things will change?
I think the more the public speak up, because it can't just keep being me. We have to have, I get hundreds and hundreds of messages a week saying, I hate smart motorways, I won't use them, I'm using the A road. Smart motorways are filling the A roads, not the other way around. And I need the public to show how they feel. It can't just be my face every single time. And no one outside of the contracts, these massive, expensive contracts for smart motorways, wants smart motorways. And there is a lot more of us than there is of them. And we need to stand together and show the government that they've got to stop putting money over lives.
Claire, thank you very much indeed for coming on. And as you say, that campaign well underway. And of course, we'll be covering what progress you guys make in that. That's Claire Mercer there, who has been campaigning essentially to end smart motorways. OK, well, that is it for the briefing for today, live from Glasgow. Thank you for your company. Coming up this afternoon, we'll have continuing coverage from Glasgow across GB News. We're also expecting a press conference from the Prime Minister a little later on this afternoon. We'll bring you that live. Of course, we're back in Glasgow tomorrow. Tom is here at 9 a.m. I'll be back live at 3 o'clock. Up next, though, we join Alex Phillips for the afternoon agenda. You won't want to miss that. But first, let's head over to the Met Office for the very latest weather this Tuesday afternoon. It's glorious here in Glasgow. What it's like in the rest of the country, let's find out.
Hi there. Some places seeing shower after shower today, other places avoiding them entirely and seeing plenty of sunshine. And inland, under clear spells, it will be a chilly one tonight with a touch of frost in places. Low pressure is moving away, the isobars are opening out, but so we've still got this chilly northwesterly breeze, and that is bringing showers primarily to the north and west through the rest of the day. Decent shelter from those showers across central and eastern parts of the UK, so really it's northern Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of West Wales into Cornwall where we see those showers continuing overnight. One or two, though, spilling down the North Sea to affect eastern coasts, and inland clear skies will lead to dropping temperatures with a few mist and fog patches first thing and a touch of frost in places as far south as Southampton and as far north as the Central Belt. Around coasts, there'll be a bit of cloud and a bit too much breeze to see a frosty start to the day on Wednesday. And there'll be further showers affecting these western coasts, Cornwall, West Wales, northern western Scotland, Northern Ireland, and more showers coming down the eastern side of England compared to today, with one or two making their way into the Midlands. But it's in central areas where we'll see the best of the sunny or bright spells, and it will feel cold, especially near the coast and with that brisk breeze. So quite bracing along the North Sea for Wednesday. And there'll be further showers along that North Sea coast for a time on Wednesday night, but eventually showers do ease away from coastal areas, and under those clear skies, quite widely, it will be another frosty one with temperatures into the low single figures or just below freezing in a few sheltered spots. So quite widely a frost as we begin things on Thursday away from coasts. But another bright day is expected. In fact, many places seeing a drier and brighter day compared to recent days, with showers mostly confined to coastal areas in the west, the far north and the east. Friday is another largely dry day, but we'll see thicker cloud and some rain in the far northwest.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.